Thank you, Dr. Taylor. As someone who treats ALS, people with ALS, and has been involved in biomedical research and clinical trials for more than 40 years, including as the Mayo principal investigator for the NUROWN phase 2 and phase 3 trials, I would now like to provide my clinical perspective on NUROWN. The FDA has approved 4 treatments for ALS. None of these drugs are curative, but they all help patients manage and stabilize this horrible disease. It's promising to see that the FDA has exercised regulatory flexibility. Given the unmet need that remains, I hope that the FDA will continue to exercise the broadest flexibility we all want safe and effective therapies for patients, and we all work tirelessly towards that goal. Research for decades. We've seen incredible advances in cancer treatments built on many incremental study effects. To me, the FDA has exercised regulatory flexibility in drug approvals and promises to continue to do so. We need to work together to harness incremental steps so that ALS therapy can evolve in the same way as cancer therapy. Importantly, we can't afford to lose a potentially valuable treatment simply because of complex data. Let me summarize why I find this data compelling, and importantly, why I believe it should be approved. While it's clear this trial did not meet its primary point, it did meet nominal significance in an important pre-specified group. To me, these results show a true clinical benefit for an important group of patients. And Dr. Wei showed us statistically, using a broad measure of totality of the evidence, that these results are highly unlikely to be by chance. Additionally, it's clear that this trial enrolled a substantial number of people with advanced disease whose data were uninformative because of the floor effect. And when we look at a larger subgroup that includes all patients who are not impacted by the floor and are thus informative, we see compelling and consistent differences between NUROWN and placebo. And this is further supported by the biological effect on CSF biomarkers across all patients. Although the change in individual biomarkers is relatively small, the totality of evidence analysis is also extremely compelling. These results demonstrate a biological effect where the bounded score was insensitive to clinical change, and informs me that NUROWN is providing a benefit across the spectrum to people with ALS. Additionally, I believe NUROWN has an acceptable safety profile, and I have no concerns about treating my patients with this product. Although there are small differences in deaths between NUROWN and placebo, in my opinion, the degree of deaths is not unexpected, especially when you consider that those unfortunate deaths occurred in those with advanced ALS. I also want to point out that while this procedure is not a pill, the procedure was well tolerated by participants. I know firsthand how devastating this disease is, and I can assure you that patients are not concerned about a spinal tap when they are facing a rapidly progressive terminal illness. Let me take a very brief moment to address overall safety of MSCs. First, MSCs have been researched for more than 30 years, with more than 200 studies of MSCs in CNS diseases in the US alone. A meta-analysis summarized safety of MSC administration over the past 15 years showed that they're safe in different populations. This was a formal systematic review. MSCs were isolated from several tissues across 62 randomized clinical trials, covering 3,546 patients. No serious safety events other than transient fever, administration site adverse events, sleeplessness, and constipation. As a clinician investigator, I also look closely on the aggregate data. While it is clear that not everyone responds to the treatments, there are clearly a significant number who do, and the response is very meaningful. I have clearly seen that some people stabilize in a way that I've never seen in any other trials. In fact, in the small number of people who participated in the expanded access program and received 6 to 9 treatments, there were people who stabilized while on treatment in the trial. In the interval before they were in the EAP, which was over a year or more in some cases, these participants deteriorate. They again stabilized in the additional treatment period. There were also some who improved their score from baseline, something that is rarely seen. And I should stress, other investigators who have been working hands-on with the participants in the trial have seen similar response.
I have no disclosures. My name is Philip Green, a 53-year-old husband and father of 4, who was diagnosed with ALS in August of 2018. I participated in the phase 3 NUROWN trial in 2019. And in January of 2021, I was selected for the NUROWN EAP. After treatment in March, I was able to do certain things with my hands that I had lost the ability to do. I could once again pick up my phone and the TV remote and use them without dropping them. I was now able to grab my pillbox, open it, dump the pills onto the countertop, pick up each pill with my fingers, and place them in my mouth. These small gains wouldn't show up on the ALS FRSR, but they gave me back some independence I had lost. In June, I began to gain strength in my legs. I was now able to stand in my pool, where before the EAP, I couldn't even lock out my legs. I could now do squats in my pool and even walk along the edge of my pool. I can also now buckle and unbuckle my seatbelt on my own. Again, these changes were meaningful to me, but would not be reflected in the ALS FRSR. I received additional NUROWN treatments in 2022 after receiving a treatment in March. My FEC went up 11 points to 45% predicted. My speech was no longer impacted by shortness of breath, and my breathing has remained strong. And my FEC earlier this month was 37% at clinic. I'm here to tell you that NUROWN works. I know it worked for me. It has helped me maintain an active and productive quality of life. I strongly urge you to consider the totality of evidence and recommend approval so the person diagnosed with ALS today or tomorrow can retain as much function and independence for as long as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no disclosures. Slide, please. My name is Mitzi Klingenberg. I am a 40-year nurse and Matt Klingenberg's mom. ALS is killing my son. Today, you have the opportunity, the power, and the moral obligation to give him more quality of life with his family. Next slide. I say this because NUROWN works on my son, Matt. Matt was diagnosed in March of 2018. He met the run-in phase criteria, and in January 2019, he began the phase 3 NUROWN trial at Mayo Clinic. Matt's fasciculations decreased immediately. He did not progress until late 2020. For 20 months, he had no changes in his overall physical abilities. He worked, wrestled with sons Mason and James, ran his usual 3 miles. The trial is blinded. Matt's lived experience is not blinded. Without NUROWN, Matt progressed. Gross motor and fine motor skills declined, resulting in falls, less balance, difficult walking, hands that didn't hold silverware or the kids. Next slide. Here are videos of Matt during the 6-dose expanded access program in 21 and 22. We have many before and after videos. When he got NUROWN, he didn't progress and improved in areas. Matt had many fewer falls. He walked faster, had better balance, opened food packages, snapped James, his son, into his car seat. Next slide. This is a before-after of his arms. This kind of improvement allows a person to touch their face, swoosh a fly, scratch an itch. His voice improved. He had near normal cadence and strength. He stated, "Mom, I feel whole. I feel like my body's working again." Next slide. He walked with a stronger gait, heel to toe on grass. Matt's walking improved so much that Mason, then 6, commented, "Daddy, you're walking better." A 6-year-old saw this. A 6-year-old saw his dad walking better. It's that obvious. Next slide. When Matt is on NUROWN, it helps him. When he's off of it, he gets worse. His progression was cyclic as related to receiving NUROWN. Matt had 13 lumbar punctures and 2 bone marrow extractions. These were not a problem. In Matt's words, it was well worth it. Today, Matt is 5.5 years into his illness. He can eat, talk, breathe, and walk with a walker. This treatment helps him fight this disease. He gained function with NUROWN. We know with absolute certainty that NUROWN had a clinically meaningful benefit. To our family, this is substantial evidence. Matt, Kelly, and all of our family implore you to approve NUROWN. Thank you.
I have no disclosures. My name is Joe Morris. I'm the husband and former caregiver of my wife, Sandy Morris, who passed away from ALS in August of last year. Sandy and I spent 33 years of our lives together raising 3 children in Lake Tahoe, California. Shortly after her diagnosis at age 51, Sandy did not waste any time carefully researching the ALS landscape and becoming a powerful patient advocate to ignite change with her limited time. She spent her diagnosed life leading the original IM-ALS teams, including legislative affairs, community outreach, and clinical trials. She was a driving force in passing Act for ALS and reformed the ALS clinical trial process. Sandy led a team that drafted and published a roadmap for people who are living with ALS and how they demanded to be treated by all stakeholders. The team that spearheaded this project alongside Sandy named these guidelines after her. They are known in the community as the Morris ALS principles. Sandy was enrolled in the NUROWN phase 3 trial and was selected to receive expanded access in 21 and 22. We have heard a lot about the floor effect in the presentation from this morning, but I'm here to share with you my family's lived experience with NUROWN. Prior to the first round of EAP in 21, Sandy's diet primarily consisted of soup. Shortly after receiving her first dose of EAP, Sandy was successfully eating not only full pieces, but entire rolls of sushi. In a disease that you do not expect to revisit function that had already been claimed by ALS, this improvement in her swallowing was an absolute home run for our family and boosted Sandy's quality of life. In addition to her improvement in swallowing, Sandy's air hunger notably decreased. Her voice became more easily understood. This allowed Sandy to continue to effectively communicate and remain powerful and purposeful within our family and continue driving her advocacy efforts, 2 qualities of life that were non-negotiable. These improvements will not show up on your ALS FRS-R scale, but my family experienced the small yet monumental benefit in function. We celebrated accordingly every day of the last 2 years with Sandy after she received expanded access. It is important to note that Sandy received expanded access in the most advanced stage of her ALS. She was not in the statistically significant group, yet she still experienced meaningful treatment effect. The change that my wife fought for, the improvement that my family experienced firsthand, and the real potential of what this committee has in front of them today is truly life-changing. It certainly was for our family. I urge the committee to vote to approve NUROWN, and I'd like to finish with a quote from Sandy, and it is, "We must work quickly to save the next ALS vintage, and possibly some of us from this one. Please hurry, the waiting is deadly." Thank you for the opportunity to share my family's experience with this treatment.
I have no disclosures. December 10th, 2018, the date on which the three letters ALS went from meaning absolutely nothing to our family to dictating the rest of our lives. My name is Candy Simons, and I'm here representing my family. Most importantly, I'm speaking for my older son, Cade, who was diagnosed with ALS at 21. I am here to ask you to recommend approval of NUROWN. With no family history, Cade was diagnosed just 6 months after completing his second year of collegiate baseball, a sport he loved and played since he was 2 years old. At 21, Cade was told that he would die within 2 to 5 years. 3 months after his diagnosis, Cade started the NUROWN Phase 3 trial at Mayo with Drs. Windebank and staff. While the trial is still blinded, I would like to describe our family's experience during the trial. First, Cade tolerated the bone marrow aspiration and 14 lumbar punctures without any issues. He would do it again tomorrow for a chance at NUROWN. Cade was a fast progressor, rapidly declining in function early in his diagnosis. Throughout the trial, Cade's decline slowed and then stabilized for about 23 months after his third and final trial injection. From the first trial injection, Cade told us how his body felt and functioned better. He moved more freely and was less stiff with more range of motion. Cade's fasciculations drastically reduced and eventually stopped. His legs were stronger and provided more stability when standing. Casually crossing his foot over his leg was much easier. He grabbed utensils, bringing them to his mouth with more accuracy. Texting was less challenging. Cade's speech and enunciation improved. This slide right here, Cade is telling you 2 weeks after his first trial injection, he stated, "I feel good, but my left side feels too good." He explained he was having to adjust to the new strength in his previously weakening legs. Each amazing task that I just mentioned improved Cade's quality of life. They are clinically meaningful to Cade and anyone fighting this horrific disease. Today, Cade is 26 years old. He has no feeding tube and takes all nutrition by mouth. Cade still has strong legs and can help support himself while being transferred. He can uncross his legs in bed. Cade still communicates verbally and uses no breathing equipment. This amazing child of mine lies inverted in bed and can fall asleep in that position. That's how well his diaphragm muscles are doing, which is not typical of someone 5 years post-diagnosis. I tell you this because COVID halted all collection of respiratory data during the trial. Knowing the trial is still blinded, our family strongly believes that Cade is doing as well as he is today because he was in the NUROWN trial. 4 years ago, he gave his body to advance ALS science. It would be inhumane to now deny Cade access to this drug because the FDA approval process didn't act as quickly as ALS is killing him. Please use your regulatory flexibility for this critical unmet need. No mother should have to watch their child die when we believe a treatment is available to help him live a life worth living. Thank you.
Ms. Simons, thank you so much for your comments and providing your perspective on this. We very much appreciate it. Next is Mrs. Paula Smith and Josh.
We have no disclosures. Thank you for allowing me to speak today for the approval of NUROWN. Has given me the ability to do so, as well as a chance at a longer, fuller life. My name is Joshua Smith. I am living proof of this success of this therapy. My ALS journey began 1,657 days ago at the age of
Mrs. Paula Smith and Josh.
We have no disclosures. Thank you for allowing me to speak today for the approval of NUROWN. has given me the ability to do so, as well as a chance at a longer, fuller life. My name is Joshua Smith. I am living proof of this success of this therapy. My ALS journey began 1,657 days ago at the age of 29.
Next slide.
Before ALS, I played football for 13 years, earned a degree in criminal justice, coached middle school football, was an avid motorcycle rider, shared construction business with my dad. My strongest advocate, my mom, will continue to tell her story.
Josh was fortunate enough to participate in the NUROWN clinical trial and continue with NUROWN through the expanded access program. During this phase, I witnessed firsthand the positive impact that this treatment had on his life. The progression of his ALS slowed down, his arms and legs had regained strength, he could still raise his hands above his head, his fasciculations had slowed down, his speech had become clearer, and the quality of his breathing had improved by 40%. NUROWN gave him a new lease on life, allowing him to continue to do the things that he loved best. Next slide. Climbing into his Jeep and driving, going down 100 steps to a waterfall while on vacation, eating anything he chooses, still playing fetch with his dog, and spending precious time with his loved ones. Now, 5 years later, Josh still has his voice and is still using it to advocate for the approval of NUROWN as it improves how he feels and functions. When he receives NUROWN, it halts his progression and in some ways restores his functions. When not receiving NUROWN, he declines. It has been 13 months since the last NUROWN injection, and he's losing his strength in his arms and in his legs. Josh can no longer walk independently, but relies on a walker or a scooter. He no longer drives. He can only go down one step in or out of our home. Vacations are getting harder as he continues to lose his function, and he now needs assistance with washing his hair and dressing as his arms no longer go above his head. Josh lives each day with a positive attitude. He taught this to his football kids. Perseverance goes a long way. Always have determination and never give up. We believe that NUROWN works. My son deserves this promising treatment. I will continue fighting this fight for him to receive it. My son is enough. He wants to live. Today, we ask the committee to grant approval for NUROWN. Josh is living proof that this treatment works. Together, we can provide hope and a chance for a better future for everyone living with ALS. Thank you.
I have no disclosures. My name is Amanda Stevens, and this is my husband, Eric. At just 29 years old, he was diagnosed with ALS on August 27th, 2019, just 1 month after our wedding day. First slide, please. His symptoms, slurred speech and left-hand weakness, began around March 2019. Before ALS, Eric played college football at UC Berkeley, and then in the NFL with the St. Louis Rams. He left that career to become a firefighter, where he served the city of Los Angeles for 5 years. With our 2-year-old daughter, Peyton, we will celebrate Eric's 34th birthday this Sunday. Eric participated in the NUROWN Phase 3 trial from February to September 2020, and then the Expanded Access Program. From symptom onset through the trial's lead-in period, Eric progressed rapidly, losing about 2 points per month on the ALS FRSR. His left hand was getting weaker, his fasciculations were spreading, his speech was slurring, and he was choking on thin liquids like water. When he received NUROWN every 2 months in the EAP programs, his progression of ALS stopped. Eric's fasciculations decreased and he had less cramping. His speech remained loud and clear, and he was eating a normal diet. His breathing remained strong. He was able to use the dexterity of both hands to tie a bow, peel open a Reese's peanut butter cup, go fishing with his brothers, turn pages in a book, text, bathe, shave, and eat with a fork and spoon. Next slide. But most importantly, he was able to be a present father. He could read our daughter books, sing her songs, help give her a bath, hold her, and walk her in her stroller. We know that he would not have been able to do any of these things had he not received NUROWN. Eric's last EAP injection of NUROWN was in September 2022, exactly 1 year ago. Without NUROWN, he has declined. He notices the most decline in his hands and limbs. He can no longer feed himself with a fork or spoon. He can no longer bathe or dress himself. He can, however, still lift a mug to his mouth to enjoy his morning coffee and use his fingers to text on his cell phone. 4 years later, Eric still speaks loud and clear and can still walk with assistance. Next slide. In conclusion, we want to reiterate to this advisory committee and FDA officials that NUROWN works. It improves not just how Eric feels and functions, but it also enhances his quality of life. He needs to continue to receive this drug so he can live a better life and be a present dad to our daughter, Peyton. Eric would like me to leave you with his words. As a firefighter, I took an oath to protect and serve. I laid my life on the line every day for others. I ran into burning buildings, putting others' lives before mine. As doctors, you take a similar oath to do no harm. I am asking you to remember that oath, listen to my testimony and that of our neurologists, then act with the same urgency as I did when I ran into a burning structure. I am not asking you to risk your life for me, like I did for others. I'm simply asking you to not stand in the way of getting more of the drug that is helping me live. Thank you.
Ms. Stevens.
Hello. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity to talk. I am the head of the neuroimmunology unit at Hadassah University Hospital in Jerusalem. And I do not have any specific disclosures to this presentation. I do not have any financial relations with the Brainstorm after our very old phase 1/2 clinical trial back in 2012. My motivation to talk in this meeting is in order, since we have so much experience, I think one of the best experience in the with the use of different types of mesenchymal stem cells in ALS, starting from 2006, the regular type of mesenchymal stem cells, and also I was involved in this study with Brainstorm, which was a phase 1/2 trial, in which 14 patients were treated intrathecally with the NUROWN cells, patients with ALS, and 6 intramuscularly only in one hand, and 6 intrathecally in the first phase 1 trial. So in total, we had 26 patients. From them, I would like very much to share with you the long-term safety observations that we have with these patients and also about the survival rates. First of all, it is interesting that now, up to 15 years after the trial, we do not we have not seen any unusual side effect. So this is a very good signal for the safety, the long-term safety. But what was extremely, or I say highly unlikely, is that the percentage of patients still alive after 15 to 16 years from the onset of the disease is close to 50%. 9 out of 12 patients treated intrathecally, they are still alive and partially functioning. And this is, to my knowledge, very unlikely as compared to any other cohort of ALS patients. And this is also further confirmed by additional 12 patients who were treated 10 years ago with regular mesenchymal stem cells, and still we see very high mortality, survival rates of 9 out of 12 being alive more than 10 years. I believe that this safety and mortality data are very important because real-life information, observation, especially in the long term, can provide sometimes the clues in order to see whether, especially in that rare diseases, orphan diseases like ALS, we can use a different type of treatment. Otherwise, I would say that there are other examples like medications in myasthenia gravis, eculizumab, which was negative in the primary endpoint and is used in specific subgroups of myasthenic patients, and also a lot of medications used in secondary progressive MS, despite the fact that the initial studies have been negative. So my view is that NUROWN cells can provide both in terms of safety and mortality rates and efficacy much more than the existing therapies for ALS, and should be approved as an alternative option for this orphan disease. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Carousas, very much for your sharing your thoughts and expertise with us today. Next, we have Mr. Wallach.
My name is Brian Wallach. I am joined today by my wife, Sandra, whose voice you are hearing, as ALS has robbed me of mine. We are testifying for ourselves. We have no disclosures. I want to thank CBER for allowing us to testify on video, and to thank the members of the Adcom for their time on this critical issue for the ALS community. As a reminder, the only question before the Adcom today is, quote, has substantial evidence of effectiveness meeting the approval standard been demonstrated by the evidence presented, end quote. As a second reminder, the quote approval standard for ALS treatments is specifically outlined by the 2019 guidance issued by the FDA, which is as follows, quote, when making regulatory decisions about drugs to treat ALS, FDA will consider patient tolerance for risk and the serious and life-threatening nature of the condition in the context of statutory requirements of safety and efficacy, end quote. Notably, Dr. Billy Dunn recently stated at the start of the Adcom for another ALS treatment that, quote, for these serious diseases like ALS and so many other neurological conditions, the maximum degree of regulatory flexibility, the broadest flexibility in applying the statutory standards is operational. With respect to NUROWN, we believe that an approval is merited based on the science and the data that the company has shared with the public and with the FDA. With HIV and cancer, the first treatments that were approved did not work for everyone, but instead helped a subset of people with those diseases live longer. Today, there are 4 approved treatments for ALS. That being said, ALS is still 100% fatal. And so it is critical that we have treatments to create a cocktail that combined help us live longer to see a cure, just as we did with HIV and cancer. We have seen people living with ALS who are a part of the EAP and who have ALS FRS scores all over the map see real benefit from NUROWN. For some of them, it has halted their progression, and for others, it has actually been able to help them regain some function. This is not something you see in a disease like ALS. These results are further corroborated by the biomarker data that Brainstorm presented today. This data builds on what we saw with tofersen and provides critical insight into how NUROWN works, as well as who it will work for. There is only one right answer here. We just hope you have the courage to recommend approval. Thank you.
It's interesting that now, up to 15 years after the trial, we do not we have not seen any unusual side effect. So this is a very good signal for the safety, the long-term safety. But what was extremely, or I say highly unlikely, is that the percentage of patients still alive after 15 to 16 years from the onset of the disease is close to 50%. 9 out of 12 patients treated intrathecally, they are still alive and partially functioning. And this is, to my knowledge, very unlikely as compared to any other cohort of ALS patients. And this is also further confirmed by additional 12 patients who were treated 10 years ago with regular mesenchymal stem cells, and still we see very high mortality, survival rates of 9 out of 12 being alive more than 10 years.